The mining station orbiting Kepler 442b had been silent for 6 standard galactic cycles. What should have been a routine extraction operation for the Zephyrian Mining Consortium had become a mystery that rippled through the Outer Rim territories like wildfire. The last transmission from Station Omega-7 had been nothing more than panicked screaming in 3 different alien languages, followed by the kind of silence that made even hardened space veterans uncomfortable. Commander Vex-High of the Zephyrian Defense Corps stood before the holographic display in his command ship's bridge, studying the lifeless station through multiple sensor arrays. His scaled hide rippled with nervous energy, a trait common to his reptilian species when faced with the unknown. Around him, his crew of various alien species worked with practiced efficiency, but he could sense their unease. The Zephyrians had been exploring space for over 2 millennia, and in all that time, they had never encountered anything quite like this. The station appeared intact from the outside, no hull breaches, no signs of weapons fire, no debris field that would indicate an attack. The fusion reactors were still online, life support systems functioning normally, artificial gravity maintaining standard parameters. Everything suggested that the 347 beings who had been working there should still be alive and well. But the complete communications blackout told a different story. Vex-High's second-in-command, a tall Andromedian with 6 arms and compound eyes that reflected the bridge's blue lighting, approached with a data tablet clutched in 2 of her appendages. Her name was Kythera, and she had served with Vex-High for 12 cycles. Her normally composed demeanor showed cracks of concern. "Commander, we've completed our long-range scans," Kythera reported, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. "The station's automated systems are responding to our queries, but there are irregularities." Vex-High turned his attention to his trusted officer. "What kind of irregularities?" "The station's internal sensor network shows life signs in 17 different locations throughout the facility," she continued, consulting her tablet. "However, these readings don't match the biological signatures of any known species in the consortium's database. The patterns are unusual, almost primitive compared to what we would expect from a modern mining operation." The commander's tail, thick and muscular, tapped against the deck plating in a rhythm that betrayed his growing anxiety. "Could it be equipment malfunction? Perhaps the atmospheric processors have been damaged, causing false readings?" "Negative, sir. We've run diagnostics on our own systems 3 times. The readings are consistent and clear. There are life forms aboard that station, but they don't belong to any of the original crew members." The bridge fell into an uncomfortable silence as the implications settled over the crew. In the vast expanse of known space, first contact situations were handled by specialized diplomatic corps with extensive protocols and safety measures. A mining station in contested territory was not the place for such monumental encounters, especially when the circumstances were so mysterious. Navigator Thexalon, a gaseous being contained within a specialized environmental suit, drifted closer to the command station. His voice emerged through mechanical translators with an ethereal quality that always reminded Vex-High of wind through crystalline caves. "Commander, there's something else you should know. We've detected trace amounts of an unknown energy signature emanating from the station's lower levels. The signature doesn't match any known technology in our databases." Vex-High studied the tactical display showing Station Omega-7 in 3-dimensional detail. The facility was impressive even by consortium standards, stretching nearly 5 kilometers in length and designed to process raw materials from the planet below. It housed living quarters, recreational facilities, processing plants, and storage bays that could accommodate massive cargo vessels. The idea that some unknown force had taken control of such a massive installation was deeply troubling. "Have you attempted to establish communication with whatever is aboard the station?" the commander asked. "Yes, sir. On all standard frequencies and using the Universal Translator protocols, Thexalon replied. We've received no response to our hails, but our passive monitoring equipment has detected sporadic transmissions in what appears to be a previously unknown language. The syntax and structure don't match any linguistic patterns in our xenolinguistic databases. The situation was becoming more complex by the moment. Vex-High had commanded vessels through pirate raids, territorial disputes, and natural disasters, but he had never faced anything quite like this. The complete disappearance of an entire station's crew, replaced by unknown life forms speaking an undiscovered language, was the kind of scenario that appeared in training simulations designed to test officers' ability to handle the impossible. "Sir," Kythera interrupted his thoughts, "we're receiving a transmission from Consortium Command. They're requesting a status update." Vex-High nodded grimly. The Zephyrian Mining Consortium was not known for its patience, especially when valuable assets and personnel were involved. Station Omega-7 represented a significant investment in both credits and political capital. The mining rights to this system had been negotiated through complex treaties with 3 different species, and any disruption to operations would have far-reaching consequences. "Open a secure channel to command," he ordered. The holographic display flickered and resolved into the image of Director Nalthex, a Zephyrian whose advanced age was evident in the deep grooves of his scaled hide and the calculating intelligence in his golden eyes. The director's office on the consortium's home world was visible behind him, with its walls covered in star charts and resource allocation displays. "Commander Vex-High." The director's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "What is the status of Station Omega-7? We've been expecting regular reports, and the silence is becoming concerning to our investors." "Director, the situation is more complex than initially anticipated," Vex-High replied carefully. "The station appears to be occupied by unknown life forms. We've detected no signs of the original crew, and attempts at communication have been unsuccessful." Director Nalthex's expression darkened. "Unknown life forms? Are you suggesting we're dealing with a first contact situation?" "That appears to be the case, sir. However, the circumstances are highly unusual. Whatever took control of the station did so without causing any structural damage, and they seem to be maintaining the facility's operations." "Have you considered the possibility of piracy? There are several species in this region known for their creative approaches to resource acquisition." Vex-High had considered that possibility, but the evidence didn't support it. Pirates typically operated with speed and efficiency, taking what they could and destroying what they couldn't. They didn't occupy mining stations and maintain their operations while ignoring all attempts at communication. "Negative, sir. This doesn't match any known pirate operational patterns. Whatever we're dealing with appears to be something entirely new." The director was quiet for a long moment, and Vex-High could practically see the calculations running through the older Zephyrian's mind. Station Omega-7 was worth billions of credits, and the mining rights represented decades of potential profit. But the consortium also had a reputation to maintain, and mishandling a first contact situation could have diplomatic repercussions that would dwarf any financial considerations. "Very well, Commander. You are authorized to deploy an armed reconnaissance team to the station. Determine the nature of these unknown life forms and assess the situation regarding our personnel and equipment. But proceed with extreme caution. If this is indeed a first contact situation, we cannot afford any diplomatic incidents." "Understood, sir. We'll begin preparations immediately." The transmission ended, leaving Vex-High alone with his thoughts and his crew's expectant stares. An armed reconnaissance mission to a station occupied by unknown aliens was exactly the kind of assignment that could either make or destroy a military career. Success would bring commendations and promotions, but failure could result in anything from court-martial to becoming the subject of cautionary tales told in military academies across the galaxy. "Kythera, assemble a boarding team," he ordered. "I want our best people, full combat gear, and portable sensors capable of detecting any life form signatures. We go in assuming hostile intent, but prepared for peaceful contact. Yes, sir. How large a team do you want to deploy? HFY considered the question carefully. Too small a team would be vulnerable if the situation turned violent, but too large a team might be interpreted as an invasion force by whatever intelligence was controlling the station. 20 personnel, mixed species composition to demonstrate our diversity and peaceful intentions. Include specialist teams for technical analysis, medical support, and communications, and make sure we have someone trained in xenolinguistics. As his crew began preparations for what could be the most important mission of their careers, HFY found himself staring at the image of Station Omega-7 on his display. Somewhere within that massive structure, an unknown intelligence had taken control of a facility representing the pinnacle of consortium engineering. Whether that intelligence was hostile or simply misunderstood would determine not only the fate of the missing crew members, but potentially the future of interspecies relations in this entire sector of space. The mystery was about to become much more personal, and HFY had the unsettling feeling that whatever they found aboard Station Omega-7 would challenge everything he thought he knew about the galaxy and humanity's place within it. But at this moment, he had never heard of humans, and that ignorance was about to become a very dangerous liability. The boarding shuttle approached Station Omega-7 with the cautious precision of a predator stalking unknown prey. Commander HFY watched through the viewport as the massive mining facility grew larger, its angular surfaces and industrial structures casting long shadows across the shuttle's hull. The 20-member team he had assembled represented the finest personnel from his ship, each chosen for their specific expertise and proven ability to handle unexpected situations. Sergeant Krexnos, a heavily muscled Carathian with natural armor plating and 4 arms capable of wielding multiple weapons simultaneously, led the security contingent. His species had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else, making them exceptionally suited for dangerous reconnaissance missions. Beside him sat Dr. Yel Nara, a brilliant cetacean scientist whose aquatic origin planet had produced some of the galaxy's most gifted researchers in xenobiology and atmospheric analysis. The shuttle's pilot, Flight Officer Zalmari, was a member of the insectoid Hymenoptera collective, her compound eyes capable of processing visual information at speeds that made her reaction times legendary among consortium pilots. Her 6 limbs worked the controls with a grace that seemed almost like a dance, adjusting their approach vector to match the station's rotation and maintain a stable trajectory toward the primary docking bay. "Commander," Dr. Yelnara's voice carried the harmonic undertones characteristic of her species. "I'm detecting something unusual about the station's atmospheric composition." HFY moved closer to examine the readings on her portable scanner. The device hummed quietly as it analyzed the air samples being transmitted from the station's external sensors. "The oxygen content has been increased by approximately 15% above consortium standard," the doctor continued. "And there are trace elements I don't recognize. The atmospheric processors appear to have been modified, but not in any way consistent with known alien physiologies." This information added another layer of mystery to an already complex situation. Environmental modifications were typically among the first signs of alien occupation, as different species required different atmospheric compositions to survive comfortably. But these changes didn't match any known species profiles, suggesting they were dealing with something entirely unprecedented. "Docking Bay 7 is responding to our approach signals," Flight Officer Zalmari reported. "The bay doors are opening automatically, and we're cleared for landing. Whatever took control of the station seems to want us to board." The shuttle settled onto the docking bay's deck with barely a vibration, testament to Zalmari's skill at the controls. Through the viewports, The boarding team could see the familiar interior of a consortium docking bay, complete with standard loading equipment, atmospheric processors, and the universal airlock designs that had become common throughout civilized space. But something felt wrong about the scene, though none of them could immediately identify what was causing their unease. Atmospheric analysis shows the bay is safe for all species aboard, Dr. Yelnara announced. Pressure is within normal parameters, temperature is comfortable, and the air composition matches our earlier readings. We can proceed without environmental suits. Sergeant Krexnos activated his communications array and established contact with their ship. Orbital Command, this is Reconnaissance Team Alpha. We have successfully docked with Station Omega-7 and are preparing to begin interior exploration. All systems appear normal, but we're maintaining full alert status. Commander Vexhi's voice crackled through their communications equipment. Acknowledged, Alpha Team. Remember, we still don't know what happened to the original crew. Proceed with extreme caution and maintain regular contact. The team disembarked from their shuttle and formed a tactical formation within the docking bay. Each member carried specialized equipment designed for their role, from advanced weapons systems to scientific analysis gear to portable communication arrays capable of penetrating the station's hull. They had prepared for every contingency they could imagine, but the quiet normalcy of their surroundings was somehow more unsettling than open hostility would have been. Specialist Trixon, a tall ethereal whose translucent skin allowed glimpses of the complex nervous system beneath, consulted her quantum scanner and pointed toward the main corridor leading from the docking bay. I'm detecting the same unknown life signs we observed from orbit. The largest concentration appears to be in the station's command center, approximately 2 kilometers through the main corridor. The team began moving through the station with practiced efficiency. Their formation designed to provide maximum coverage while allowing for rapid response to any threats. The corridors were illuminated by standard consortium lighting, and the familiar hum of functioning life support systems provided a comforting background noise. But as they progressed deeper into the facility, subtle signs of change began to appear. Tool racks that should have held standard mining equipment instead displayed unfamiliar devices with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to shift slightly when observed directly. Control panels showed readouts in an unknown symbolic language that hurt to look at for extended periods. Most disturbing were the modifications that had been made to various systems throughout the station, changes that improved efficiency in ways that violated several fundamental engineering principles. "This is impossible," whispered Engineer Velkar, a cybernetic-enhanced mechanoid whose optical sensors were designed to analyze technological systems with perfect precision. "These modifications should cause catastrophic system failures, but instead, they're improving performance by margins I can't calculate. It's as if whoever did this understands our technology better than we do." Dr. Yelnara was examining what appeared to be a standard atmospheric control panel, but the readings it displayed defied conventional physics. The energy efficiency improvements alone represent advances that should take our scientists centuries to develop. And these atmospheric modifications aren't just supporting unknown life forms, they're optimizing the environment for maximum cognitive performance. As the team approached the command center, the signs of alien influence became increasingly obvious. Walls showed scorch marks that formed patterns too regular to be accidental damage, almost like writing in a language of controlled destruction. Surveillance cameras had been repositioned to observe angles that served no apparent security purpose, but created an aesthetic arrangement that was somehow pleasing to look at despite its alien origin. "I'm reading 17 distinct life signs in the command center," Specialist Trixon reported, her voice carrying a note of confusion. "But the signatures are strange. They're not just unknown, they're inconsistent, almost as if the beings we're approaching don't have fixed biological parameters." Sergeant Krexnos raised his primary weapon, a pulse rifle capable of stunning or killing most known life forms. while his secondary arms activated force field generators and targeting systems. Team Alpha to Orbital Command. We are approaching the command center. Request permission to proceed with contact protocols. Permission granted, came Commander Vex High's response. But remember, these beings have demonstrated the ability to take control of an entire mining station without leaving any trace of violence. Do not underestimate them. The command center doors were standard consortium design, but they opened before the team could activate the entry controls. Beyond lay a chamber that should have been familiar to anyone who had served aboard consortium vessels, but had been transformed into something that challenged the mind to process. The layout remained the same, but every surface had been modified with improvements that made the original design seem primitive by comparison. And standing in the center of the chamber, examining a holographic display that showed information in formats no consortium computer could generate, was a single figure that defied every expectation the boarding team had formed about what they might encounter. The being was bipedal, roughly humanoid in overall structure, but with proportions that seemed both familiar and utterly alien. Its height was average by consortium standards, but its movements carried a fluidity that suggested perfect biological efficiency. Most striking were its eyes, which tracked the approaching team with an intelligence that was clearly analytical, calculating, and completely unafraid. "Welcome aboard Station Omega-7, the being said, its voice carrying no mechanical translation artifacts, despite speaking in perfect Zephyrian standard dialect. "I apologize for the lack of communication, but your technology proved insufficient for the complexity of information I needed to convey. My name is Marcus Chen, and I represent the human species of Earth. I believe we have much to discuss." The silence that followed this greeting stretched for long seconds as the boarding team tried to process what they had just heard. This single being claimed to represent an entire species that didn't exist in any consortium database, spoke their language with perfect fluency despite no previous contact, and had somehow taken control of one of the most advanced mining facilities in known space while treating it like a casual conversation topic. Sergeant Krexnos maintained his weapon readiness while trying to formulate a response to what might be the most significant first contact in galactic history. "Where are the members of the original crew? What have you done with them?" Marcus Chen turned to face the sergeant directly, and his expression showed what appeared to be genuine concern. "The crew of this station is safe and unharmed. They are currently in secured areas of the facility, receiving medical attention and psychological support. Several of them were injured during the initial evacuation, and others were experiencing severe stress reactions to the situation." "Evacuation?" Dr. Yelnara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "Evacuation from what?" "From me, initially," the human replied with what might have been embarrassment. "It appears that my arrival was somewhat more dramatic than I had intended, and the crew's reaction was understandably negative. I've been working to correct the situation and ensure their safety while attempting to establish communication with your authorities." The boarding team exchanged glances that conveyed their mutual confusion. This scenario bore no resemblance to any of the contact protocols they had trained for. The being before them claimed to have accidentally frightened an entire station crew while attempting peaceful contact, then proceeded to take over their facility for their own protection. "You're saying you control this entire station by yourself?" Engineer Velkar's mechanical voice carried a note of skepticism that transcended species barriers. Marcus Chen looked around the command center as if seeing it for the first time. "Control is perhaps too strong a word. I've made some necessary modifications to improve efficiency and safety, and I've been maintaining operations while waiting for your arrival. But I'm hardly in control of anything. I'm just one person trying to make the best of an unexpected situation." The implications of this statement were staggering. If this human was telling the truth, then a single member of an unknown species had accidentally taken control of a major industrial facility, made technological improvements that surpassed consortium engineering, and was now conducting first contact negotiations as if it were a routine business meeting. And if he was lying, then they were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had prepared for. The revelation that they were dealing with a human named Marcus Chen had sent shockwaves through the boarding team's understanding of the situation. But as the hours passed and conversations continued, a far more disturbing truth began to emerge. This lone human was not just any representative of his species, but something that challenged the very foundations of how the consortium understood military capabilities and technological advancement. Dr. Yel Nara had been conducting discrete scans of Marcus Chen throughout their discussions, and the results defied every scientific principle she understood. "Commander," she whispered into her communication device during a brief break in conversations, "the biological readings I'm getting from this human are impossible. His cellular structure shows signs of modifications that shouldn't be compatible with organic life, and his neural activity patterns suggest cognitive processing capabilities that exceed our most advanced artificial intelligence systems." The human had been remarkably accommodating in answering questions about his presence on the station, but each answer only raised more questions about his true nature and capabilities. According to his account, he was a reconnaissance agent for something called the Human Colonial Defense Network, investigating reports of unusual activities in this sector of space. His arrival at the station had been accidental, the result of a navigation error that brought his ship too close to their operations. "I'm afraid my presence caused something of a panic among your crew," Marcus had explained with apparent regret. "My ship's stealth systems were still active when I approached the station, and when I attempted to decloak and establish communication, several of your personnel interpreted the energy signatures as an attack. The situation escalated quite rapidly from there." Sergeant Krexnos had pressed for details about this alleged stealth technology, but the answers he received were more unsettling than illuminating. According to Marcus, human stealth capabilities were based on principles that bent space-time around their vessels, making them effectively invisible to all known forms of detection. The energy signature that had frightened the station crew was simply the byproduct of returning to normal space. "Your people's reaction was entirely understandable," Marcus continued. "From their perspective, a completely unknown vessel appeared from nowhere in the middle of their facility. Several of them opened fire with mining lasers, which forced me to take defensive action." The security footage that Marcus had provided showed events that challenged the boarding team's understanding of what was possible. The humans' defensive action had consisted of somehow disabling every weapon on the station simultaneously, then using the facility's own systems to create force fields that gently but irresistibly moved the crew to secured areas. All of this had been accomplished without causing any injuries or permanent damage to equipment. Engineer Velkar was studying the technical specifications of the modifications Marcus had made to the station's systems. "These improvements represent technological advances that our brightest scientists believe are centuries away from practical implementation. How does your species possess such capabilities?" Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the question. "These modifications? They're fairly basic applications of quantum field manipulation and molecular engineering. Most human children learn these principles in their secondary education programs. I was simply adapting your equipment to function more efficiently while I waited for your authorities to arrive." The casual way he dismissed technological miracles as basic education was perhaps the most frightening aspect of their entire conversation. If Marcus Chen represented typical human capabilities, then his species possessed technological advantages that made them potentially the most dangerous force in known space. And if he was exceptional among humans, then what were their military specialists capable of? "Mr. Chen," Dr. Yelnara ventured carefully, "could you tell us more about your role as a reconnaissance agent? What exactly were you investigating in this sector?" The human's expression became more serious, and for the first time since their arrival, The boarding team sensed something approaching concern in his demeanor. "We've been tracking unusual energy readings throughout this region for several months. The signatures suggest the presence of an unknown technology that could pose a significant threat to civilian populations. When my investigation brought me to this system, I detected similar energy patterns emanating from your mining operations." This information sent a chill through the boarding team. If humans possessed the technological capabilities that Marcus had demonstrated, and they considered something in this region to be a significant threat, then the consortium might be facing dangers they couldn't even comprehend. "Are you saying our mining operations are somehow dangerous?" Specialist Trixon asked, her quantum sensors automatically beginning deeper analysis of the station's systems. "Not dangerous exactly," Marcus replied, "but you appear to have accidentally uncovered something that was deliberately hidden. The energy patterns I detected suggest that there are ancient technologies buried beneath the surface of Kepler 442b, technologies that were placed there by a species that disappeared from this galaxy long before your civilizations achieved spaceflight." The implications of this revelation were staggering. Ancient alien technologies hidden beneath the planet they had been mining for resources represented either the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history or a potential catastrophe that could threaten all known life. And the human reconnaissance agent had apparently detected these technologies using sensors that were invisible to consortium science. "What kind of technologies are we talking about?" Engineer Velkar's mechanical voice carried undertones of both fascination and fear. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words carried a weight that made the boarding team unconsciously step back. "Weapon systems, primarily. The species that built them called themselves the Harbingers, and they designed their technology to activate automatically in response to certain types of industrial activity. Your mining operations appear to have triggered some kind of defensive protocol." The silence that followed this statement was broken only by the hum of station systems and the quiet beeping of various monitoring devices. The consortium's most profitable mining operation had unknowingly awakened ancient weapon systems that could potentially threaten entire star systems. "Commander Vex High," Sergeant Krexnos spoke into his communication device, his voice carrying the controlled tension of someone delivering catastrophically important information. "We need immediate evacuation protocols for this system. The mining operations have activated ancient alien weapon systems that pose an extreme threat to all personnel and civilian populations." The response from their ship came back filled with static and confusion. "Sergeant, please repeat your last transmission. Did you say ancient alien weapon systems?" "Affirmative, sir. The human reconnaissance agent has provided evidence that our mining operations have triggered some kind of automated defense network left behind by a species called the Harbingers. We need to contact Consortium Command immediately and initiate emergency protocols." Marcus Chen had been listening to this exchange with apparent interest, and when it concluded, he offered a suggestion that sent new waves of terror through the boarding team. Actually, evacuation might not be sufficient to address the situation. The Harbinger technology appears to be designed to pursue any civilization that activates it until the threat is completely eliminated. Running away might just ensure that the weapon systems follow you to more populated areas. Dr. Yelnara felt her breathing apparatus working harder as the stress of the situation affected her physiology. "Are you saying these weapons will hunt us across space?" "That appears to be their design philosophy, yes. The Harbingers were apparently very thorough in their approach to eliminating potential threats. However, there might be a solution to the problem." The humans' matter-of-fact delivery of potential solutions to impossible problems had become a pattern that the boarding team was beginning to find more terrifying than reassuring. If Marcus Chen could casually propose solutions to ancient alien weapon systems, it raised uncomfortable questions about what other capabilities he might possess. "What kind of solution?" Sergeant Krexnos asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. The Harbinger systems appear to be designed to recognize certain technological signatures as evidence of species that have achieved what they considered acceptable levels of development. If we can modify your mining equipment to broadcast the appropriate signals, the weapon system should recognize your civilization as non-threatening and return to dormant status. Engineer Velkar processed this information with mechanical precision. You're saying you can modify our equipment to communicate with technology that's millions of years old, using principles that you understand well enough to implement in a matter of hours? Marcus nodded, as if this were a perfectly reasonable request. The underlying mathematical principles are fairly universal. It should just be a matter of adjusting your quantum field generators to broadcast in the correct harmonic frequencies. I can walk you through the process if you'd like. The boarding team exchanged glances that conveyed their mutual realization that they were no longer dealing with a first contact situation. They were dealing with a representative of a species whose technological capabilities were so far advanced beyond their own that the gap might be impossible to bridge. Marcus Chen had accidentally discovered ancient weapons systems that threatened their civilization, then casually offered to solve the problem using modifications that he could implement as easily as adjusting a light switch. And the most terrifying aspect of the entire situation was the growing certainty that this human reconnaissance agent represented the absolute minimum of his species' capabilities. If Marcus Chen was just a scout, what were human military forces capable of? And what would happen when the rest of humanity learned that the consortium had inadvertently threatened their agent while he was protecting an entire star system from ancient alien weapons? The answers to these questions would determine not just the fate of Station Omega-7, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and every other species in known space. And as the boarding team prepared to contact their superiors with news that would reshape galactic civilization, they were beginning to understand that they had not just encountered aliens. They had crossed paths with something far more dangerous and far more powerful than anything their people had imagined possible. Marcus Chen continued working on his modifications to their systems, humming quietly to himself as he casually prevented the destruction of their entire civilization. And the boarding team watched in silent terror as they realized that humanity's idea of a routine reconnaissance mission might be everyone else's definition of a miracle.